ultimately the company. It's a simple, easy reminder, sort of in a simple graphical format. To the client, you're going to turn around and show it to the client, and it's going to be all about sort of what it embodies to them as a company. So really, that's, you take all their words that they say, and you say those words back to them when you pitch the logo, essentially, because it's really about, sort of encompassing their branding and everything their company entails. So, and that's our job as designers, represent everything into one single graphic, all of their ideologies and all that good stuff. So hopefully that makes sense, Scott from Ontario, and let me know if you guys have questions, because I'm going to do some simple logo design. Again, these are just the fundamentals, and these are typically the things that I like to keep in mind when it comes to logo design. Just making sure it's always simple, right? Not simplistic, but simple, right? Making sure it's memorable, okay? So it's going to be recognizable and memorable. When I say timeless is the next one. A lot of times as designers we jump on sort of trends, and trends often make things look dated as well. So if it's timeless, that kind of is what you're going for ultimately, because we all could do some cool trendy stuff. I like doing it, but it might not make it timeless. Versatile, so this means it's going to look good, of course, really large, going to look nice and clean, really large, and then it's also going to look good when it's really small, and also when it's really small next to all your competitors' logos. So is it going to look good large? Is it going to look good small? And are you going to have different variations with those logos? And make sure it's appropriate, because it's all about your company's branding, and all about, what they're trying to convey as a company, and making sure that gets conveyed to the audience. So I have a couple little examples of this, if we can kind of dive into some of this. Cool. Just checking. I know it's a Friday afternoon, and everybody's pretty relaxed. Typically this is how it goes for logo design, is you're like given the brief, right? So you have to figure out, okay, what is this company all about? What is it? What are they going for as a company? Like, here's the brief. We need a logo, and it's around an airline. So that's why I'm showing you this graphic right here, okay? So this is the company, and now we need to make a logo based on this company, all right? And obviously it's like the ultimate in air travel, where they're like the opposite of economy, and essentially it's about the alternative or ultimate for an airline, okay? So currently there's a trend in doing cheap travel, and they're doing the opposite of that, okay? But that's what we do, is we'd be given a brief, which you just saw, we do our research, and then we'd start to sketch out things as well, and obviously pitch it, revise it, present it, that whole process. But we're starting here at the top, essentially. Okay, so we've gotten the brief, and then we'll do research as well. So again, here's our brief. This is the next thing I would typically do, is I would see what's out there for airlines, and let's just pan down. You can see that essentially I have all these different logos for various other companies. Okay, so we want to make sure that we're aware of all these logos, because our logo is going to appear next to these other designs, okay, and other logos. So I just need to keep that in mind. And since it's Altura Airlines, I need to make sure it doesn't look like American Airlines, because that's another AA, if you will. So I'm going to be aware of that. They actually just redesigned their logo, so I'm going to be aware of that, but also just be aware of all these other logos, kind of what the competition has, and you can see it kind of obviously is across the board. Okay. All right. And next up, I'd kind of take a dive and take a look at what's out there as well in terms of inspiration. So I'd want to get inspired, and essentially I'm going to use actually Behance to do that. So if I take a look actually real fast, just kind of switch gears here, you can see I'm actually on Behance right now, and here's where I just do like a quick search on, say, logos, and I'll literally type in logos just to see. And I'm using Behance because a lot of this stuff is curated, and you'll see some really sick, some really great work out here I'll even start with this top one. Martin Cervantes is an art director. Crossed keys, we can see, again, just some of his work just to kind of get inspired and go from there. I actually have other examples that I want to dive into. I like his because his are all flat colors. So I want to actually take a step back and let's just take a look at some of the examples that I've kind of dug up. And again, going through Behance and all those other examples. And these are just pro tips. This is actually a document I plan on posting on good old, let me switch gears. Sorry about that. Going over, there we are. This is just actually a document that I want to post through social media a little later, but these are tips in that same document, okay, around tips. So like anything cliche-ish, a lot of times we have this like hipster logo. I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but this sort of cliche of these lines and then these letters, way overdone, right? We've seen that done like way too many times. So that's what I say, avoid the cliche right here. Diving into type, we want to get into custom. Custom type is actually pretty hot right now. Any hand lettering is really cool. It's actually honestly kind of trendy right now, but it's actually been around quite a while. If you take a look at the Coca-Cola logo, it ensures that yours is going to be original. And, if anybody tries to knock it off, well, hey, you're not using a standard font. And I think all too often, people that might be too new to logo design, they think logo design is just, taking a trip to the font menu and seeing what typeface sort of fits the company or makes the company name look best. And that's the kind of like the last thing you want to do. So it's kind of an amateur move. We can take a look at, again, keeping it simple. Like I talked about a second ago, you can see obviously we have the Apple logo, we have the Nike logo, but don't keep it so simple that it's boring. So if we take a look at this particular Apple, obviously the byte's not taken out of it. And personally, you could argue that it's much more unique with that chunk taken out of it, as in, okay, there was participation involved. Right, so again, keep it simple, but not so simple that it's boring is the idea there, okay? Even in terms of making it simple, you can get really passive and you can get pretty active. If you take a look at the Twitter logo, for instance, and you can kind of see how it's evolved from, again, a pretty passive bird, okay, just sitting there. Even this one, he's kind of flying. This one, he's kind of leveled out, but this one has that upward motion, and this is their latest one, okay? Having that upward motion, it's obviously an active logo, which is really cool. A lot more positive rather than this little freaked out bird right here, okay? And what they've also done is they've kept it so simple and clean. They've used a lot of proportions and symmetry, so there's actually all these perfect circles in the Twitter logo. Okay, and you can see how they intersect and how they've removed parts to create this logo. Okay, so I think that's actually, pretty darn clever, but that's what makes it look so balanced. Because even for some of these others, what you want to do is you're tempted to, like, your eye wants these two lines to be perfect perpendicular when they're not. Okay, and I think this one seems much more balanced and more seamless since it's all based on perfect circles. Okay. Chat is kind of quiet. I don't know if hopefully everybody can see all this. Perfect. Awesome. And hopefully the visuals are keeping up with the audio as well. So Scott, let me know if there are any issues here with what you're seeing. Because actually I want to dive into some of these other examples, okay? This one right here, in terms of turn up a little funky music. Sort of using negative space or like a double entendre, like where you might end up. So you can see right here the pendulum. You can see that it's a pen, and then you actually can see that you can actually see the pendulum right in that pen. Super clever. Same thing for Martini House right here. Super clever what they're doing, using that negative space and those two cocktail glasses to make obviously a sweet logo. And then we have this one for Learn Golf, which you can see the golf hole, as well as, you know, the book, which is pretty obvious. So that's kind of, again, just a good examples of, you know, sort of double meaning with images, as well as using negative space often. If we take a look even right over here, as I kind of pan over, you'll see these everywhere, by the way. Let me find, like FedEx, for instance, right here, using this negative space. Not everybody sees it, but there's obviously like an arrow between the E and the X for FedEx, okay? Or, you know, the smile that's on the Amazon logo, okay? But using that negative space is actually really going to benefit us a lot. And then, of course, be unique to the brand. I don't know if you guys know about these two, but BMW, supposedly this, at least the story goes, that it was originally an airplane company, and this is a propeller, and this is what it looks like when a propeller spins. And whether that's true or not, it's a nice story that goes with the brand and harkens back to their history as an airplane company, which is really cool. And we can take Toyota. Okay, we talk about this all day long, about how it could be the infinity symbol, but you could even break it apart and actually says the word Toyota made up from that logo, which I think is really cool. So doing something clever that also sort of grabs headlines is huge. RL, good to see you. Sweet. All right, Scott and RL, good to hear you guys are doing well. So I'm gonna move on again for my project as well. So again, it's for this Altura company. So let's just zoom out. Altura Airlines. We know current trends. We've seen various examples, so we know what the competition has, and now I can start designing. And a good place to kind of begin is even using, you know, assets that are already out there. So a lot of times I'll actually use Adobe stock. So let me just kind of show you that screen right now. Here I'm on Adobe stock. I can just literally type in logos. Let's see what we get. But any assets that I want, stock.adobe.com. What's cool about this is that, like, right here, check this out. Like, look at this. That's how many, I don't know how many images are here. Look at this huge set of vector logos, right? And what I can do is I can save a preview to that library, or I can actually even license it and save it directly to that library as well. In fact, since there's so many, there's probably like, I don't know, maybe 200 to 300 here, a lot of logos. That's totally worth it for like 1 credit. I'm gonna sync that directly to my library, okay? So that's what I have synced. I'm also gonna do a search right over here. I'm gonna search for plane, right? And I want it to be vector assets, so I'll click update. And now I get all the plane assets right in here. Okay, ooh, I really like these too, because this is showing these planes from like different angles. And I kind of like that idea. I think we can go even simpler here, but I could see various A's in any one of these. So I can license and save that as well. Hey Scott, welcome back, buddy. So with that done, let's change the music, because I feel like I'm doing yoga. I feel like I'm doing more yoga. All right, cool. Diving into, just to share that screen, what I have now. There we are. I've saved to that Creative Cloud library. You could see it right in here. Libraries, Altura, this is what I have selected, a library I already have created, and you can see those assets right there. So just kind of creating a new layer. I can jump in there and take a look at this large set of vector assets. Look at all of these. This is crazy. Okay, I'm not going to be as simple as like taking one of these, but I can still use any elements of these for my own project. And what I really liked right down here are like some of these globes. So I might be able to use this element potentially as a starting point for my logo. So going over here, pasting it in, why not? I can start to use that asset in Illustrator. I'm going to take this a step farther, because now that I have some assets, you might start thinking about fonts. Okay? In fact, that's what I want to do right now, is I'm just going to use my text tool, type in A, and like I said before, I don't want to, like, logo design isn't just like picking a font or anything like that, but what I do want to do is sort of see what's available, what's out there as a starting point. 9 times out of 10, I'll actually use Arial as a starting point, and you'll see most people do. A lot of the stuff that I do is a variation on Helvetica, actually. But sure, I can go through all of this stuff, but I also wanted to point out Typekit. So Typekit fonts are available if you are a Creative Cloud member, and that's actually where I'm going to pick fonts from. Let's give it a second. Wait for it. Wait for it. Zoop. Here we are, Typekit. So again, you can kind of see, I can type in Altura, for instance. That's the name of the company. I'm going to start to see these different fonts. This Jaff Domus looks like a way cool font, and looks like I've actually synced it already, which is good because I really like that font. And then you can sort by classification over here, and headings. So I want a sans serif, that's a heading font, and I get all of these different options. Okay, and let's make sure we type in again, like that. There we go. Kind of going through these, kind of like Fira Sans seems pretty, or Mr. Eves Sans. Again, I would just use this font as a starting point, but just showing you that you can sync fonts directly to Illustrator or Photoshop or any of your Creative Cloud apps. There it is, Mr. Eves. There's the font, and I can actually use this again as a starting point right now, typing in that A and making this sort of a part of the logo as I start to build this out. And notice how I actually have these planes as well, which I think are super cool. I'm actually going to take this one right here. Come right over here, paste it in. Flip it. And potentially just use this back end. Alright, so real fast, if I just want to isolate the back end of this plane, I can take a square over the top, select those two, and I can turn that into a clipping mask. Right now I just have that half of the plane, basically the tail. If I double click inside, you can see that I can actually access still that square that is serving as the mask and trim that up to get what I want, in this case, something kind of like that. Alright, so again, this is just a start. Notice how I'm working just in black and white, which is typically what I would do in this case. Adding an A right here, because I'm thinking I would like for this A to kind of follow that back of the fin of that airplane. Using shear, we'll actually shear it, and shearing is basically slanting it a direction, and you can see I've just added that. Ultimately, this might harken back to actually what's on the plane, which is a slanted A, right? Something like that. All right, Jason, what's up, buddy? Good to see you. Scott, what's your thoughts on left justified versus full justified? A lot of newspaper-focused people like full. Yeah, I'm not sure if you're talking about for logo design. I think I would never have a flat-out decision on some of that without taking into context the content. Because I'm sure there's reasons for picking left justified versus full justified. I could easily see newspaper people liking full justified as opposed to left. But it's all about legibility at the end of the day. Locking that in. We'll take this A. Remember, this is my typekit font. Actually has different weights. So I have book, I have regular. Okay, and maybe I want to extend this out, make this a little larger, something like that. Right click. I can send to back, okay, and do something like that. But again, this is just the very beginning of this logo design. As I start to dive into this, I'd probably spend a little bit more time. This is going to take me a lot longer than the time I have on the stream, quite frankly. Something like that. Sure, why not? And I'm like, okay, that's fine. If some of you guys are wondering, Scott and RL, if, typically I will sketch this stuff out first. I did want to make this a little bit more like Illustrator focused, but in general, I'd actually start, drawing things out like I've done here. So I'll sketch things out first and then dive into, working on the computer. But quite frankly, as long as the computer doesn't get in your way or the app doesn't get in your way, it honestly is personal preference, Just whatever's fastest. You can use an iPad and use Apple Pencil and draw that way, right? So I'm getting some things done. I can see, obviously, I have this shape. This actually probably isn't even quite working for me because it needs I need to remove the color for one. Because we need to establish it as black and white, because it probably will be black and white at some point, and I want to make sure it stands out in that case. Dropping in A. Another thing I wanted to try is something with some upward motion, so let's take a look at plane. I have some other assets that I can work in right here, like this plane right here is one I want to grab. The problem with this plane is it doesn't really say premium like the brief originally says. It doesn't look like a very high quality plane. So I'll actually remove it. That's why I liked some of these that I was pulling from. Like this one, for instance. This one's much more high end. It feels much more high end, and I might want to go with it. Some of these tilted looks a little precarious, like the plane is not going straight and steady, which isn't good. But that's why I'm going to pick this plane, drop it in. There we go. All right. Let's say this. All right, we are back. Hey Jake, what's up, man? Good to see you, buddy. I'm gonna go for another 10 minutes working on this. I'm going to license another image. Let me just kind of share my screen just so you can see what I'm talking about. This is actually out on Adobe Stock again. Just finding some more assets. You can see right here. I'm actually going to save a preview of that one just because I'm not 100% sure I want to use it, because I want to try the word jet. All right. Those aren't bad. Probably actually a little too fast. But some of these are nice, even using this. We'll save this preview as well. Again, I'm just gathering assets at this point. Even the one I see right here, saving that one. All right, cool. Now, I can take a look at some of these assets, like in Illustrator. Take a closer look at them. This one's, again, not bad. Taking a look at this airplane set, I like this one a lot better. This one seems, or this one actually seems like pretty high quality, so does this one. So even from within Illustrator, I can license that image. Okay, so I can license that image of those 3 assets. Let me just switch my screen, sorry about that. Licensing this image, and again, right down here, if you just right click on any asset, you can license image like I'm doing right now one more time for that asset. What's up, Jake? Sweet. All right. Getting into spa music again. All right. Back to our design right in here. Again, we have a number of options, and this is all part of just sort of creating based on that brief. Like, I really like this asset, for instance. Let's take this A, change that to a just for now. Use a clipping mask. Let's use this asset. This also came from Adobe Stock. But again, just using this as elements. Black and white. Using the typekit font that I found earlier. Kind of like that. Might want to round the corners of this so it fits this asset, which has kind of curved corners. Using something like stroke. Let's give it a weight. And then just rounding the corners and the caps just kind of rounds each side there, right? It's going to thicken it up. That's fine. Let's make sure it's black. And then I can actually change the size here. So that's kind of more what I want. Actually fits with these swooshes and everything as well. Let's take sheer a little more, kind of like that. Cool. All right. Yeah, Scott, to answer your question, there's no necessarily rules over left justified versus full justified. If you're talking for a title, I don't think it really matters as much as paragraph text, obviously. Paragraph text, left justified being easier to read. So yeah. So these are the versions that I have, just a handful at this point. I'm actually going to be finishing this design up on the Facebook Illustrator page on Monday, where actually we'll have something more refined. What I also will be doing is sharing this document as I went through earlier, and I don't know if you guys saw it or not, or who was online at that point, but going through sort of all the different examples when it comes to logo design, from ideas to just some general rules to keep in mind when you're designing, okay? So I was actually keeping all these in mind as I was designing, understanding our competition, what our client's trying to do, and then also, you know, what we end up with. So that is my goal, but I have to finish this up on Monday. So yeah, Jake, good to have you here. It's actually going to be on the Facebook page, and on the Illustrator page will be a live stream. So I'll post that URL. You guys can join me on Monday, and again, I will have this wrapped up. So let me just post that URL really fast. There you go. Cool. But as you can see, after posting that, this is kind of where they're at. I kind of like this one the best in terms of designing. And again, I've only been designing for 30 minutes, kind of based on what we had. I'll wrap this up on Monday. You guys can check it out. Jason, it's good to see you. Scott, Nathan, Jake, RL, Vinty, good to see you here. CJ. Yeah, you have a good weekend too, man. Yeah, so we'll see you guys hopefully on Monday, and we have a lot going on. I think Jason might be broadcasting on Monday, and yeah, we have a lot going on, and we're always open to your suggestions on what you want to see, because it's all about you guys. So thanks for joining me, guys, and yes, we will catch